Building in Web3 is what this podcast is all about. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to a true OG and builder in the space. Christoph Jentzsch is an early Ethereum developer, serial entrepreneur, and currently has some very cool Web3 products lined up with his company Corpus Ventures. I'm not sure if I've ever talked to someone that is more passionate about Web3 than Christoph, so we are in for a treat today. Hello and herzlich willkommen to the Bernhard Neumann podcast. Here you get insights, assessments, and knowledge around the topics of Web3, NFTs, and crypto. I'm your host, Bernhard, and I help brands to successfully enter Web3. My guest today is Christoph Jentzsch, a true crypto and Web3 OG. It would take a little longer to introduce him properly, so I think it's best to leave it up to him. That's more interesting. Welcome, Christoph.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, let's get right to it. Maybe tell us about yourself. A few words. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, from a personal point of view, I'm a father of 8, a family man living in a small town in Saxony, so not in a big city. But it's just personally but also personally for my passion and my career as Web3. So I started with this actually in 2013. I was working in my PhD for theoretical physics and needed a lot of graphic cards, so GPUs. And then I stumbled upon GPU miners or Bitcoin miners back then. That's how I got introduced into this world. So since then, especially 2013, I did read everything I could. And back then it was possible to read everything in existence about the topic. And so then fall in love with Bitcoin, then discovered the Ethereum white paper in beginning 2014, which completely blew my mind, because then it was clear to me this concept of decentralization, which we had with Bitcoin as a currency, we now could take to many, many other fields as well in the form of smart contracts. And if you read this white paper by Vitalik again, it's like a prophecy. It's almost everything in it got fulfilled. All the applications. He basically foresaw DAOs, tokens, all of those kind of things. The only thing he didn't see was NFTs, but the other thing you can all find in there. So it was really, really interesting. So then I stopped my PhD, although it was just 6 months left. So I'm not a doctor, but I joined the Ethereum Foundation. This was summer 2014. Worked there for 1.5 years, which was among the greatest times in my career. It was a lot of fun to work with Vitalik, Gevin Wood, and Jeffrey Wilcke, Joseph Lubin, and many others. And so we built Ethereum. My role there was the chief tester, so being responsible for the clients were following the protocol, in short. So then we launched Ethereum in summer 2015. I stayed then after DevCon 1, which was London 2015. Then I created Slockit together with my brother and a co-founder called Stefan Tual from London. And we thought about decentralizing the sharing economy. Again, very long story, but we needed funding. So we thought, well, first let's do a token. Then we said, no, let's give the token holders the right to control the money. And then we said that everybody has control. Everybody has the right to get money out of this thing. And this was actually the DAO, the first DAO. The big one at least. So raised more than $150 million, but failed due to a smart contract bug. It's also a long story. We cannot put everything in this podcast to today. So after a very intense summer 2016, there was a hard fork. People were able to withdraw their Ether from the DAO because the DAO failed itself. But we continued with doing Slockit, got some VC funding, grew the company, had one pretty successful product in a niche market, building an IoT client. We sold the company in 2019. I stayed 2 years there as a CEO, then I left, I left last year in summer, and beginning this year I started Corpus, but we'll get to Corpus later.
Yeah, wow. This is why I said true Web3 OG. You were really there for the beginning. That's very exciting. So what was it like back then? You already explained, you could basically read everything there was about the topic because it was so small. So did you end up, where did you start working? What country? Did you move somewhere? Was it London, or where did you get started?
So the office was actually in Berlin. So when
Okay.
you say how it was back then, so it was still extremely distributed, which back in those days, remote work was not as common as today in
Hmm.
post-COVID time. It's called a pre-COVID time. So many people, also tech workers, mostly worked in offices, but the Bitcoin world was very spread. There was a very strong ideology, which is still there, and like this Bitcoin thinking, but not in the terms of maximalism you see today. It's more of like very political, very like we are separating money from the state. It's about independency. It's about self-sovereignty. This was what it was all about. But also technically, back then the thinking was, well, all the other like other altcoins or alternative chains would build things, and Bitcoin would just adopt the best of it. So back then, people still saw Bitcoin was quickly adopting and like
Okay.
introducing new technologies. But then we had this debate about the block size, like the 1 MB or not, and you saw quickly Bitcoin was not able to evolve technically. It was more a currency which needed a blockchain to exist, but a blockchain was not the focus. It was the currency which was the focus. And there was all those out of chains coming up. This one app chains like Prime Coin, where sort of proof of work you would mine prime numbers, or there were many other alternatives, or Litecoin, or Namecoin. Namecoin was just simple. Actually, the similar thinking as ENS, like getting a name but having its own chain for this application. So Vitalik saw this that, well, if we can build a virtual machine where you can do all those things freely, like in smart contracts, having a programmable part in the blockchain, you can solve all of those issues with one platform, one blockchain for all of that. He tried with Bitcoin first, but he didn't succeed in like convincing them to making such a major change. So then he went to the Mastercoin guys back then, and they thought it was too aggressive, too much change he wanted to put to their chain, which had for each application they needed a protocol change, more or less. So and then he said, well, screw it, I start my own. And then Vitalik came, Gavin came as the one who was able to implement it. So sometimes it's underestimated how big the influence or role of Gevin Wood was in Ethereum. I know he's doing Polkadot today, a little bit different ecosystem, but he was able to execute Vitalik's vision and write a technical paper called the Yellow Paper. And this was very exciting times. We were very tech focused, where we build it and they will come. And so this was not just exciting, also the mindset was everything can happen. This was like on this platform, anything can be built. And it's still a niche group. So we were at the beginning 20, 30 people on Ethereum. Then DEFCON 0 in Berlin, this was in 2015, I think it was about 40, 50 people there. So very small group in Kreuzberg, and it was fun. And we shared, we almost exclusively talked about the tech. And price was like a hidden rule. You don't speak about the price. Back then, the price was not really live, so this Ethereum hasn't launched. But also afterwards, price was really not the motivation for most of the people there. It was this freedom, this enablement, this ownership was possible, and fighting against the big tech and governments. This was more the mindset. Maybe it's too strong. Maybe the group was very diverse. Maybe not anybody not thought like that, but many had this mindset of creating something so independent and strong that would not rely on any government or big tech company and would easily outlive them eventually. So this is thinking coming from Bitcoin. You create something which exists forever. And this was the spirit. And actually the term Web3, there is an earlier version about more the different semantic web, but Gevin Wood wrote a blog post in summer 2014, and that's where he defined Web3 for me. That's what brought me into Ethereum. And this was this post-Edward Snowden time, and we need to like reinvent the web, stop giving data to these big companies, having more control. And Ethereum was not just building a blockchain. It initially thought about building a platform for decentralized application. And part of this would be the Ethereum chain. Part of this would be Swarm, a decentralized file storage, and Whisper, decentralized messaging. The other two didn't take off as Ethereum did, and there are other protocols kind of replacing it, similar to like IPFS and Filecoin for file storage and other alternatives. So, but the thought was, let's build an infrastructure for decentralized applications and making sure there's never ever a single point of failure. It's always completely non-custodial. And if you build an application, you actually just build something which is not relying on you, even the front end can be hosted somewhere else. Smart contracts live forever on chain. That's how those applications should be. That's why we call them dApps, for decentralized applications. And there was even a joke or like a sticker that my app is AppCoin free, meaning don't create your own token. So it's like we all use Ether. So this was the mindset in 2014, 15, 16. Of course, then the DAO happened, which was amazing in some sense. Of course, it was extreme and it was, I would not say set us back. It refocused on security and smart contract security and those things. Then the ICO phase came, DeFi, NFTs. And I mean, we don't want to get into all the details, but it was a very exciting time. And now I think if you compare to today, there are a lot of applications which use a little bit of blockchain by using maybe some coins, using maybe some NFTs or using this and that. But this mindset of creating applications which last forever, which are independent of any company, which just like similar to Uniswap or ENS, you can build your own user interface. You can just use those smart contracts. You're not relying on any company behind it to run. This was what we thought would happen with Ethereum.
That's such a beautiful insight. I could hear about it for hours, honestly. So the catalyst was kind of this. I mean, there was obviously Bitcoin and the white paper, and then there was this Edward Snowden thing you said, like where people just realized, wait a second, maybe we should own our data. Maybe this should be not in the hands of someone else. Was that kind of the vibe back then?
Partially, yeah. So Bitcoin just opened our eyes that it was possible to create a system which cannot be censored by anyone. And then Edward Snowden was just one more like the tipping point of there's so much like this big companies and also governments, they are like surveilling us and this needs a solution. But most of the solutions were also centralized companies. And now we thought like with this new tech, we might be able to build something, but we don't build an application, we build new infrastructure. That's why we call it web3. It's a new kind of paradigm, like how you build applications, what protocols to use. And blockchain was just one building block in this. This was the mindset. We thought very, very big, like building applications which last forever and would change everything. And this is the mindset we went into. And as Edward Snowden was important, the financial crisis, but Ethereum was not financial oriented in the beginning. So DeFi came later. It was first and foremost a new kind of web infrastructure for building new kinds of applications which could never be stopped, which would run forever. And because we thought smart contracts would be perfect and never be needed to change, we thought we could build something like this. Now we learned a bit more that yes, smart contracts sometimes are really hard to make secure and there are challenges and we need governance. Now we have those governance tokens. So we learned along the way, but this was the initial mindset or motivation.
Beautiful. So, maybe transitioning to Web3. So, what is Web3 to you? I think you described it already a little bit. And where do you see it developing as of now, as of today?
I think the biggest difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is ownership. That's the one word which describes it easiest. You could also use other words as self-sovereignty, that you have control over your things. That it's possible to build applications without any single point of failure, using a lot of cryptography and other methods for authentication instead of relying on a central entity authenticating you or things like this. Those are descriptive, but ownership is at the core of it. Bitcoin for the first time gave us this ability of having a private key which owns. Simply said, it's just an entry in a database, but this database cannot be changed backwards, only forwards, and only with signed transactions, which have the permissions to change this kind of thing. Like, actually, Bitcoin is just saying who's allowed to move those UTXOs, not more accurately, to change the ownership or the right to change the ownership of those UTXOs, which is a technical subset of Bitcoin. And Ethereum, if you look at the smart contracts, 90% of them do exactly the same. They handle permissions. Who's allowed to change what in the smart contract? Who's the owner of a certain contract, or who can mint tokens? Who can transfer tokens? Under which conditions? What are the conditions like to swap two tokens? Or what are the conditions to change ownership in an NFT or distribute royalties or whatever? It's mostly about permissions, but linked to value or a currency or a token, which has a monetary value in it. You can trade it for some even fiat. So this ownership thing is a new concept in Web 2. This doesn't really exist in Web 2. And around this notion of ownership, you can build all kinds of things. And that's why we thought of building a new kind of notary system, insurance system, financial system, without banks, without insurance, without governments, and so on. So you feel like you can build the world again from the ground up, hitting of course a lot of walls, regulatory, adoption, and others. But that's what Web3 is capable of, and Web3 applications are capable of. So many things built within the core of Web3, which have those attributes of having no central point of failure, being sufficiently decentralized, and so on, and being interoperable. That's also a very important part. Everything, for example, on Ethereum is interoperable with everything else on Ethereum. Smart contracts can talk to each other without relying on any centralized entity. So those are some key attributes of the system, or this ecosystem. That's what I would call Web3. Now, on top of this, there are lots of applications which only partially fulfill those criteria, which use components of it, or which are maybe built with a token inside. Or let's take, for example, exchanges. So some would say FTX was part of Web3. I wouldn't. I would say they used it. So the Web3 core, or even most of the other exchanges are just like little centralized companies touching it. But then you have something like Uniswap, which is also an exchange, but this lives completely within Web3 because you can easily integrate it within your application. You don't need to ask anyone for permissions. It's just living and continue to live. You can build your own user interface and so on. So those are for me, the criteria to differentiate between what's inside the Web3 core, what is built on top of it. And depending on your definition, you can count it as within the ecosystem or something like that. But I would be careful to describe all of the speculation and tokens out there as Web3.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. So I would be interested, how far off are we from what you guys envisioned back then? Like all the way you've seen it all coming, you just explained that there is Web3 infrastructure. There's also some Web3 applications. Most just use some aspect and hence are not decentralized and all that. So how far are we off? Like, do you see this going in the right direction?
I would say there is a group going in the right direction, but the amount of people is just so big that we have everything now. So I'm disappointed by how far we have come when it comes to the core. Like proof of stake, they take forever. We still don't have a real decentralized messaging protocol which has been adopted. Not people where we are working on it, other groups are working on it. So, but I would say, like, if you would have asked me in 2014, 15, or 16, if in 2022 we would have something like back then it was called Whisper or decentralized messaging working with that, of course, I would not rely on any single messenger like WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram, or even email, which is unencrypted, to send messages. But we don't have it yet. I would say it's totally normal that we have many things like a decentralized game to play chess, for example, and this would just be a real decentralized application which can be hosted, like user interface can be hosted by different people. They would all play like this one world chess game where you can maybe even play with money or whatever you want. It doesn't exist like that. Maybe there's one application I just don't know of, but nothing like that. This has taken off. So meaning the things which have taken off in so-called Web3 is not the things we thought of which would take off back then. This is more what I described as not core Web3, more people using part of it. So, but the core is moving in the right direction, but way too slow. That's how I would see it. And all these applications, because those things don't exist, like a decentralized messaging protocol or a really good decentralized storage protocol, which has taken off, people still use Amazon Web Services and many other things.
Yeah. So how do you think this is happening going from Web 2 to Web 3? Like I have the horrible term, I'm just going to throw it out there, Web 2.5. But how are we going to transition? Are we going to transition? What's in your mind here?
I think the biggest blocker is non-custodial key management. Once people actually control their keys, convenient enough and securely, then real Web3 applications are easier to use. Like you using Uniswap or ENS is so simple if you have your keys and just make the transaction. It's actually harder on a Web2 application where you have to create a username, log in, password, and all of that. So, but it's similar to Web2. Once people had their Google account and could log in with Google, Web2 applications became extremely simple. But if you would take two people coming with no internet, first-time users, what would be easier, Web2 or Web3? If you use Web2, they first have to create a Google account, they have to sign up everywhere, they don't have an email address yet, before they can use a standard Web2 application. So there are actually quite some hurdles. It's just that the large population of internet users has already done this. That's why it's now super easy to use. If the same person would say, I enter Web3, he would start with a wallet, create keys, and use those apps directly. It actually would be easier and shorter and more convenient to use for an absolute newcomer. But the transition from I'm already a heavy Web2 user and using my Google account everywhere to Web3 is actually a tough one, because non-custodial key management and doing it securely is not trivial. And understanding what all the stuff you're doing there, signing messages and stuff, this is still a bit complicated. So that's why I think it's still a bit tough. But Web 2.5, yes, you could say it exists, meaning it's standard Web 2 applications which are integrating NFTs, for example, which is totally fine. We want people to use that kind of stuff, but we still have a long way to go that you just log in with your wallet and use most of the things completely non-custodial as actual decentralized applications, have just a few apps which add some convenience services on top. So you still live in the majority of my time in Web 2 and not in Web 3.
Mm. Yeah, I've never heard it this way. I love the, take someone completely fresh and let them use it. I can confirm, I'm very native to Web3 now, and it just makes sense. It works. And especially, I don't have those third parties telling me, no, you can't do this. Like just yesterday, I had a Twitter account of a company I'm building. I had it locked because I was not using it for a while because I was still building the company. So they say, no, you can't use it anymore. That's very Web3 here, and it wouldn't happen in that's very Web2, and it wouldn't happen in Web3. So last question here, maybe before we transition. Do you see the incentives lined up here for people, for the world, maybe also for the tech world to shift towards Web3? Do you think we have the incentive structure so it's actually going to happen, or do you have an opinion here?
It's a very good question, because this is the origin of our problem, incentives. In the beginning, the incentives were more ideology, or the dream, how we dreamed up Web3. And yes, actually, without having the goal of it, many of us made money because Ether and other coins kind of went up. So this already happened now. And so what's now with incentives, people either build new chains, which don't make too much sense right now. For many cases, at least. There are some where it does, and you can use Polkadot or the Cosmos system where you have app chains. And this, for many cases, also makes sense. It's just fine. But there they have this incentives of their own token and so on. Then you have, from a pure company perspective, in user convenience, you don't see how it's more convenient for users. It's not a marketing strategy where you get a lot of new users just because you're using a Web3 application right now. So also there, the incentives are not there yet. And that's because of those incentives, that's just touching on it and using it a little bit. So the real incentives, yes, is building core infrastructure, which is open source, free to use by everybody, no rent seeking. And this is an incentive problem. It's the same incentive problem we have in general in open source. Open source is always a hard topic, how you earn money with it. And there are ways to do this, but it's tough. And same is with core Web3 infrastructure. Like building an Ethereum client now. What do you get for this? Maybe a grant from the foundation, which maybe covers your cost. But it's not much. You wouldn't gain anything else than that. Maybe some reputation about it. Nice. But if you, let's say, make a exchange business or some just Web2 applications, or maybe some stuff in the NFT world. I like NFTs for its core, but some stuff being built on top of it, you can just see this quick money. And this is where the incentives are. They quickly make some money, and doesn't benefit the real Web3 core ecosystem. So yes, we do have an incentive problems. I don't see it solved as of now. And I just hope there's still a lot of people with enthusiasm for the dream and continue building. And if you go to an Ethereum conference, there are.
Yeah, for sure. So okay, so right now, mostly the ideology carries us. I mean, do you see already some killer applications of the technology? Has there been something where you say, "Oh wow, this makes total sense"? And Mark Cuban says like, and I think I tend to agree with him. Like he thinks there needs to be something like WhatsApp, something like TikTok, where people just, oh, I gotta use this. I need to use this, and for that reason, I make the jump we just described, right? For that reason, I'm gonna face it and see, okay, what is this wallet thing, and how can I own my own keys? Have you seen anything like that, or is there something on the horizon for you?
So 2 3 years ago, I always answered this question with this killer applications is the interoperability between all of those. So this is like the big thing that they all work seamlessly together. But nevertheless, there are some things which I think are really important, but maybe not yet the killer application. So take for ENS, for example. I'm a huge fan of ENS and those names, but it's if you don't need those names anywhere, you don't have the urge to get such a name. But if you have this vision of what might come in the future, everybody's getting those ENS names, but you don't have to, like, in order to send a message. So one thing, and it's now a bit, okay, we are building this, is DM3 is a messaging protocol for having interoperability between messengers. So you, for example, sending from a Signal to Telegram to WhatsApp and to others. And with the idea that your name, your username or your profile is actually your ENS name, which is owned by you. Because your phone number is not really owned by you. It's your phone company, which could change who's the owner of this, which you're currently using for signing into Signal or Telegram or even WhatsApp. And this is also actually not good. So, but what if you can own a name, which is unique in the world, your ENS name, and this is your username, and you can log into different messengers with this name. You don't need any phone number, no other identifying information, except you choose to disclose it. Plus, on ENS, you have the information necessary to send you a message, which is just your encryption key, so people know how to encrypt your message, and where to send the message, the delivery service URL from your messenger, whatever messenger you're using. And if messengers are supporting this protocol, this would be, in my case, I would think a killer application we for the first time would encrypt it interoperability in messaging, what we don't have right now. So like email, but encrypted. So this could be a killer app. This would then be a motivation for people to get their ENS name. Because it's now, okay, this is my name in the Web3 forever for all messengers. I want to have a nice one. So it's important to get a good name. So this would be then a motivation because they want to send this message. Similar to Web1 or internet, email was the first killer application, communication. And so I still think communication would be a very, very important one. Others is what we see in the financial world. You see this tokenization of everything. Mm-hmm. And this is from stock markets to art in the form of NFTs. With tokenizations, I mean also NFTs, non-fungible token, or E31s, which are fungible tokens, depending on the use case. But we see this tokenization of many, many things. I think it makes most sense where you replace an old legacy system which is not able to change. So in Germany, for example, I think the Handelsregister, which is the public register for LLC companies or GmbH in Germany, that's one thing we are working on, to say we are tokenizing those shares, making it like not needed anymore to go to the notary and get a public registry entry and so on. One case, but also stock markets. But stock markets, they are already pretty simple to exchange ownership of stocks or an HE. So that's why it's not a 10x improvement for comparison to, for example, a GmbH. We saw it in the art. NFTs, to say have digital ownership of a digital art. I think this is still a great thing. We have to see where things are going and what else can be done. I think in the music industry, if those artists discover that there was actually an app in a lot of this app, you should check those apps in 2015 to 2016 at DEFCON 1. They were so visionary, but too early, that's why it didn't happen. But if you look at the apps there, today would think you have to build all of this again. So one was back then Uju music, where the idea was if you have a song, you can say like 5% go to the drummer, 20% to the frontman who sing the song, or 5% to the guitar people, and 5% to the technical guy who mix it up. You have exactly a distribution, how if you buy a song, how the money is distributed. It would happen right away. So you buy an MP3, and the fund distribution happens according to the smart contract. Same can happen for art, same can happen for other products and services where this distribution is fixed. So those kinds of things are really, really nice for me. Plus, of course, the organizations like DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations. And I'm not speaking just about DAOs, all kind of organizations which want to have a formalized governance, which is enforced on chain. It can be hierarchy, it can be distributed, but it's formalized and specified in smart contracts, and it is forced that the execution happens on chain. So you cannot go like around this with any like shortcut or so. And this is also, I think, a nice application. But I don't know what the killer app is. Yeah, I don't know the killer app. We'll see.
So many questions here, Christoph. So let's start with the messaging. Like I just had to smile. You explained it to me before. We met at a conference, and I loved it already. Now I love it even more, especially also with the interoperability of the messengers. It truly, like, I think we never thought of this, but I actually use several messengers, for different people, and like I never thought, hey, what if I could send something from Signal to WhatsApp, or like there is something. I feel like that's a really cool application, also with ENS actually owning it. That makes so much sense. Your phone number, obviously, nothing to own there, and so. How's this gonna happen? Like how we like? I think the idea is pretty strong. Like it's very obvious. I'm not sure if you can really oppose it. So how is this turning reality?
So what we did at Corpus right now is we specified the first version of the protocol, and this is also, we are not going about this like a Silicon Valley startup which pushes the product into the market. This is about getting consensus in a large group. So a little bit of cat herding, if you want. So meaning you have to go to those different messengers and say, look, we have this protocol. Would this work with your product? And why not? So we talked with Status, with Wallet Connect Chat, Skiff, and many others, just asking for feedback. So far they have been very positive. That, well, there's this little change which will make it so much easier for me. And I have this group messaging here where we develop this kind of protocol. If you make this one more field where we could set a topic which is encrypted, we could use it as well. And so we are just collecting feedback and see what is the least common denominator, right? So see what everybody can use and works with. And that's what we are currently doing. And it's evolving nicely. We have a reference implementation, but it's more like to show how it all is done in open source and how you can implement the protocol. We hope that by the end of the year, we have a protocol version 1.0, which is done. Of course, we know things will evolve, but good enough. And then we will ask all those messengers to please integrate it. And people can create DM3 profiles as in their ENS text records. And then I hope we start seeing exactly this. I think it will be our path towards adoption is, that's also why we did choose the ENS registry. Technically, we could just start a new registry, just similar to ENS, just create your DM3 name, and a new name registry .dm3 or something. But we thought the ENS community is a nice subgroup. In size, it's not too big, not too small. They have the same values as we do. We add value to their ENS name. There's already an existing registry. Some people don't need to change anything. Don't get a new name or things. So we thought our path towards adoption is get the ENS community to use DM3 everywhere. So in their applications. And we actually talked to some, or maybe before I start this thought, when the ENS community is using it, then we get Ethereum. If we get Ethereum to use it, then we get Web3. If you have Web3, then in 5 years we have the world. That's roughly the path towards adoption. And one problem you have is, technically we're not building a messenger, but a messenger protocol. But even there, you have this problem of you're only joining it if your friends are also there. With any social network, the same. The reason I'm using WhatsApp is not because I like WhatsApp, but that's the only way to message those people who are on WhatsApp. So, and how do you overcome this two-sided markets? And one thing which I think is a really good use case are those little chat boxes on websites for support, those help desks. You sometimes have in the bottom right corner. And there you don't need those two-sided markets, but what you do want is having 100% being sure you're talking to a representative of this company. And the good thing with DM3 is, let's take, for example, MetaMask. There's so many scams out there saying we are the MetaMask support. Please give us your public private keys. And so if I'm talking to metamask.eth. And it's just verified because all the messages are signed with their key. So I'm talking to the owner of the key of metamask.eth. This is what I don't need this two-sided market, or all my friends need to be there. I'm just logging in. And most of those Web3 applications, I'm already logged in with my wallet. So I don't need to do anything. I'm logged in with my wallet. I'm opening this chat box. I'm sending those signed and encrypted messages, which only the receiver can read. I know I'm talking to metamask.eth or to uniswap.eth or whatever the company is. Or maybe their support.metamask.eth is a subdomain. But I know who I'm talking to. It's verified. It's encrypted. This, I think, is also a path toward adoptions, that those Web3 applications add this to their chat box, where you can just have a verified communication with their support team.
Yeah, this is such a cool aspect. I didn't have this like this. Okay, I know I'm talking to you. This only gets more important, right? As everything is digital, we're supposed to have some metaverse and whatnot. You want to know, am I talking to this person specifically? Before we go into something else, like some question that arose in my mind or some thoughts. So you truly, you stand for this Web3 spirit, and you want to build this decentralized apps, decentralized web structure. Yet you rely on Ethereum, and so my question is: do you see all that you want in that protocol here? And so this is why you, with all your heart, can build on it.
So first of all, I'm biased. I was part of the team who built it, yes.
Yeah.
But even trying to be more objective, since I'm not directly affiliated anymore with the Ethereum Foundation as an employee or something like this, now as an entrepreneur, I first of all see this is by far the biggest community, by far the most action happening in terms of application building in DeFi market, NFT markets, and so on. So you could say, well, Polygon and others, and Polygon is nice as well. They at least commit to the Ethereum chain, so they are similar to a sidechain. So a lot of things have built out of necessity because Ethereum was too slow to change in terms of like gas fees and things like this. Now we're looking into layer 2s like ZK rollups, which I'm a huge fan of. So I think this will change a lot. But because of this necessity, other ecosystems have built. I think there's a lot of good things in them. Like I like Polkadot, I like the Cosmos ecosystem. There are many good stuff out there. The only problem I have is if it's bit, and it will happen, or it did happen, like Linux. Linux was great, and then everybody has slightly different ideas, and you have those different Linux distributions. And because of this, Linux is not really mainstream. It's only on servers. It's in the backend. It's good, but the desktop Linux, people use Windows or Apple mostly. And one reason is because they have separated in so many different distributions. So with the blockchain, we have a bit of the same problem, and it's unavoidable because everybody is free to use their own version of it. But if we want to get mainstream market share, I think it's better if we are more onto one and make this better. This is one thing. Second is interoperability is much easier if your applications are on the same system. So yes, technically you can use bridges, but bridges are insecure. They have been hacked, and it's just it's inconvenient. So I don't want this. So if, for example, I've told earlier, we're working on this tokenization of GmbH or LLC shares. And the reason for this is not only to trade them quickly, but you can use them within DeFi. And I want to have those smart contracts or those tokens on the platform where they are most usable. And on Ethereum, I can use those tokenized shares, for example, as a collateral for getting myself a loan. Or I can use some application which stream payments. You can stream shares to my employees if I want, on at each block a little bit. And there's so many. Then you have nice wallets that I like the Gnosis Safe a lot, which is a multisig, and it's fully developed on Ethereum. Of course, you can also use this on other chains, but this is where it works the easiest. So we had one application where we thought about using Polygon, and Polygon works nicely. I have nothing against Polygon, but from a user perspective, they would have to change the MetaMask RPC. For us, it's super easy, but it's just such a huge step for someone who has no clue what he's doing. And then he needs to get some magic tokens and transfer ETH. Maybe he has already ETH to Mate. So actually, if he would start with Polygon, it's maybe similar to if he would start with Ethereum. But if someone is already in Ethereum, the switching costs are high. And so that's why it's much, much simpler, and it's much easier to get ETH and paying your transaction fees or other things. So I still think Ethereum is easier for users because it has more adoption already, and it's better informed in terms of interoperability. Although I'm not 100% optimistic forever with Ethereum, I'm also fearing a bit that all those layer 2s are not yet interoperable enough. Meaning I write applications on layer 1 and they are fun to write, they are easy to use, they are nice to integrate with others. No, I'm looking into layer 2, and if I'm writing something on a Starknet and then someone else is using Optimism and someone else is using ZK Sync, those applications are not directly interoperable, not easily at least. You can build some bridges and things are on the way, but it's going right now. So as of today, it's not easy to really say this is one ecosystem and where you have the same benefits.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting answer. You know, like it makes sense that things tends to like move apart, and so many small groups going in a different direction. And if Ethereum represents for you the strong basis, then totally makes sense for me. And you're not alone here. Like I listened to a talk of Philipp Sandner, very famous German blockchain professor, and he thought, like he said, okay, if we want a essential currency, you know, a essential cryptocurrency, like he would build it on Ethereum. And I thought that was a very strong statement, because like I guess it is that strong independent foundation that we need for Web3 probably. And so I would like to you're building this messaging service, very exciting. Like, and then you mentioned tokenizing, GmbHs in German, LLCs in America. Like that's such a huge undertaking, right? Like it's like you going deep into like the state wants to register them. You have to go to the notary all the time. And I mean, I just created one earlier this year, and so it's it's a bureaucratic mess, really. And so how like isn't that a very big thing to tackle? How's it going with that?
So my approach is, although I would like to change a lot on the regulation level or on like how the state works, this takes too long. So I just take it as is. And yes, to register your GmbH in the Handelsregister, which is a public registry, you have to go to a notary. Nothing will change there. I cannot change it. I don't have power over it. So directly tokenizing those shares is also not possible, because I don't have any writing rights into this public registry to change any entries there. Only the notary has. So, and this is just the legacy system, also just how it is. But what we can do is have a token which represents such a company share, which is always tradable for a real company share. Meaning, if there's tokens, you also have rights to dividends, to liquidation proceeds, but most importantly, you are allowed to go to this company and say, I give you the token and you have to give me a share. That's the most simple explanation. And there's a lot of details about how to do this and how to make this binding so strong that it never breaks. We've worked over a year now with lawyers to fix this. And if you go to a lawyer and say, I want to tokenize my company, the first thing they usually say is either you have to do an AG, which is more like an Inc. in the US, which is a bit harder. In Germany, you have to pay about 100K to create an AG. And there's much more rules around the board and all those kinds of things. So it's much more heavy than a GmbH is. There are solutions for this. Then they maybe say to you, just create a company somewhere offshore, Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Singapore, even Switzerland. And there you can do this. And your German company is just 100% daughter of it. So your cap table management happens there, and you operate here. But it's a horrible user experience for a founder to say, I have my German company, and the first thing I have to do is create another one, move all my shares there, and do like tax declaration, all of this in those countries. So it's also not really what you want to have. So our goal was have existing GmbH use our platform as simple as possible to do fundraising, family and friends round, employee participation, and so on. And so legally, what you have to do, like after you have created your GmbH, the German expression for this is genehmigtes Kapital, so like it's an allowance for the CEO to give out new shares. If he has this, he then can use our platform to actually issue tokens which have the promise, and the German word is Genussrecht, so it's like a right to have dividends, liquidation proceeds, but also the right to come back to the company and say, look, I have this token, I will give it back to you. Now you have to go to a notary with me and give me an actually company share. And we made it in a way, I don't want to get into legal details now, we don't have time for this, but the real innovation we did with the lawyer was that it was so strongly binding that the token and the right do not fall apart. That's what is challenging when you just have investment contracts for many, many, many investors. There's a chain of contracts from when the company issued a token to 1,000 trades. Each of them is a contract. If one of those contracts is not valid, then technically the tokens and the right fall apart. And we found a solution for this. Go on our website, tokenized.it, to find out more about it, but how to solve this problem.
Very, very cool. I got really excited when you explained it to me first, and excited now. So how do you think that changes dynamics? Like, why would companies want to do it? Why would you, as a user, want to buy a share? I mean, maybe like, what change do you see with this innovation?
So as a founder myself, I saw, and also as an investor, when a company is doing fundraising, during the time, it can easily take up to 6 months from first conversations until the money hit the bank account. You're completely frozen. You cannot change your story. You cannot pivot when you see things are not working out. You don't know if you can now really start hiring or not yet. It's a terrible situation to be in. You want to make this time as short as possible because you want to get speed. This is one thing, make it much, much quicker. The second thing is, why do we raise in rounds? Why do we have pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C, D? Just because it's so much work and so much overhead, we basically make it discrete. But why not do it continuous? And with our tool, you can basically have an invest now button on your website. You are setting, that's my current market cap, or in other words, that's my current price per token. I'm selling up to X because I don't need more money now. And this is just open. Anytime anybody can, as long as I, as a founder, say it is open, can invest until my limit is reached. Or if I see I don't need money anymore, I maybe just raise the price. When I'm issuing those tokens, if I need more, I might reduce the price, hopefully to a very realistic price. So I'm having those terms, and I can just like play with them as I go. Like my valuation goes up, I just landed a huge deal. Next day, my valuation is, after my opinion, twice as much. So if now people want to invest, they can still, but at a higher price. So that's what I like when issuing tokens. On the secondary market, of course, there people pay whatever they think it's worth. It's a free market, and they will see demand and supply. But when I issue shares as a company, I'm setting the price. So, and that's what I can do. And I can have now continuous fundraising. And then when I had a situation that like some friend came to me, can I invest like 1,000 or 10,000 euro in your company? I was like, oh, I have to go do so much bureaucracy for this, and it's just not worth it. And the notary costs as much, so or the lawyers. So, but now if I can just point them to my website, just help yourself. So do it on your own, and this is like the real big change.
Yeah, and on top of it, maybe the possibility of the every man, every woman to invest actually, right? Because
Yes.
like you're hardly ever in those rounds, especially not pre-seed or anything angel rounds, and so now all of a sudden you have the chance. Like, is it then very similar to crowdfunding, or like what was like what?
It can
What are your
go in
thoughts?
this direction. So
Mm-hmm.
crowdfunding is definitely a very important aspect of it. But if you say, I don't want to have the crowd coming in or my own, you could also say, well, only my users. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is programmable equity, how I like to call it. If you're like an early adopter, like you're in the NFT space. So let's say you have given out NFTs. Only if you own one of those NFTs, you can invest in my company because you're like one of my 10 top.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And you can now do such things, which are just technically they're just very hard to do in the traditional world, and it's just so simple to do. Token gated permissions for doing investing, but it's just one thing. I also think the formation of a company, or this whole notion of like ownership, this is what sets a group of people on one mission. be it the investor, be it some users, being it the developers or the founders. And it's such a powerful thing which created enormous wealth over the last 100 years since it exists. Like all the big companies, it's enormous what happened just because you had such a tool of ownership. And now if you take out the friction in the beginning, you might have those little stores around the corner, which maybe just have a hard time right now. They can easily just raise some funds from their customers, maybe pay it back later. It just reduced this friction of economic activity around ownership in a company. And this in itself is such a powerful thought, what can happen with it. I'm imagining just like, I have 3 boys. If they have a nice business idea, I want them to go on my website, say, let's just click, create this company. It's not yet a GmbH. It's not yet, doesn't have limited liability. We don't need it yet before we have customers. We say, well, we all get 1/3. Then they ask, Daddy, do you want to give us like 500 euros because we want to do this, don't know, kind of cleaning cars business and we need some stuff. Yes, I give you 500 euros and I get 10% of your company for this. Just a little idea. Without yet limited liability, they can get going. When they get some money, they paid through dividends out in the smart contract and be done with it. And they have this nice little platform to do it. Once they become big, they may say, we might need limited liability. And so we now register a GmbH, but just transfer tokens to shares and now even can continue to give out shares that family and friends invest if they want. But this is now so much easier than in the old system. And we are thinking about Germany, which is a real working system, more or less, just very bureaucratic. But if you take this now to other parts of the world, where you now can create a company just with your smartphone, basically, distribute shares and get investments and pay out dividends just as an app, that's powerful.
I love it. I have to say it, like reducing that friction, that unlocks so much. And, to me, like, I thought like that Web3 and the ownership-based economy we want to create here, like, can really also change society and how ownership is distributed in society. Right now, it very much tends towards two sides, right? One group has basically all of it, the other group has none. And so I feel like if there's less friction, if anyone can become a part owner, an investor in something they believe in and they can help shape, then all of a sudden maybe there's more middle ground here. Do you see something like that as well?
Yes, we get more accessibility. That's important. We're reaching a larger amount of people who are now able to invest in such companies. We're lowering the bar to entry, which is good.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I think this is beautiful. Like, I think, when can we expect a solution? I want this buy button here.
Yes. So right now we are in beta mode. So we are doing it ourselves right now. We have a couple of companies who want to test it. So that's hopefully done by the end of the year. And so we are planning to go live Q1 next year. So on tokenized.it.
Yeah. You already gave me a lot of your time. A quick couple of questions. So you mentioned DAOs, and like since I have you here, like there's so much talk about DAOs, right? And you built one already. Can this work? Like the idea is cool, but does it work to control something by programmatic things, and also with this true voting thing? Do you see DAOs working?
So now I'm giving you the same answers as my lawyers always do. It depends. So it depends, meaning I do not believe that DAOs are well suited for developing products and reaching product market fit. And there I need a strong founder and hierarchy is better. And technically you can also encode those governance rules on chain, and some people might call it DAO as well. But most people today think about DAOs as a very distributed governance, and a lot of people having something to say. But I think, yes, for product development or reaching product market fit is not a good fit. I don't think it works very well. But if you have a product which has found considerable traction, is very mature, ENS is an example. ENS is not undergoing heavy changes. It's just like tiny optimizations, refinement, some might be bigger than others, but not that much. So that makes a lot of sense in giving ownership to a large crowd, in that case, the ENS DAO. I think ENS DAO makes a lot of sense. Or if you have a protocol, or I sometimes take the example of Airbnb because that's what we tried to disrupt back in 2016. So developing Airbnb as a product, That's this hosting of rental apartments and such. I don't think a DAO would have worked. Back then I thought it would, but today I don't think so. But now today I would love the DAO would be the Airbnb would really be owned by the hosts and the users, and they have a thing to say when it comes to the fees or how the platform is handled, and they would own a huge chunk of it. That would be great if Airbnb would DAOify in that direction. So for established products which have found product market fit and which are very mature and just have minor adoptions, I think for them having a DAO makes sense. But for getting there, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I'm gonna take it. It makes total sense, and we will see. It's an exciting concept. Let's see how it plays out. So, yeah, to come to a close, like I wonder, like, and also for the people, why are you building all this stuff in Web3? What's your motivation here overall? I mean, we see the passion. What's motivating you to do it?
It's definitely not money. It is my hope. It's an easy saying, a hope for a better world. It's always the thing you said. You hear from Silicon Valley, but really, I think that we live in a time where governments get bigger and bigger and have more and more power over us. And I dislike this big government, a lot of control, more rules, more people working for the governments, more and more and more. And then you have governments which are purely evil, and we don't have that in Germany. In Germany, it's just bureaucratic and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But in other countries, you have pure evil. And that's one problem. Then we have those big tech companies, and they are becoming similar always to government. Some of them have a bigger GDP than government, than some nations. So they're just so huge and so powerful. And too much power and too many in a few hands often leads to corruption and misuse. And currently, I think Web3 is our peaceful revolution, a peaceful demonstration that we say we are getting back to control. We don't give it up. We want to control, well, okay, the applications, the data where we log in and so on. And when it comes to currencies, yes, it is in fight against some government currencies. Some people deny it, say, no, it's not political, but blockchain is political, if you want it or not. So especially the Bitcoin part or even Ether as a currency part. So I hope that we live in a more free and world where people have more self-sovereignty, people have more control and digital ownership, because digital ownership can lead to so much, make the world really a better place by having less corruption. But not just corruption, it's more empowering individuals. As I said, with this Tokenized app, if an individual has the power to quickly create a company, share capital management and distribute dividends and so on, that's such a powerful concept, can be used for so many things. And this completely controlling it with their own private keys. Those concepts, and sometimes I say the same as with the DAO. Why did we build a DAO? Many, many reasons. But one of them was just because we can. It's technically feasible. And it's just such a nice vision and dream. So we had to do it. I would, like all my life, I would regret not having tried it. But being capable of it, understanding the technology, having maybe today also the financial means to do it, and then not doing it, I would regret it all my life. So I have to do it. Even with DM3, we don't see any immediate way of monetization. It's an open source tool, it's just a protocol, but it just has to exist. And if you see the tools right in front of you, and you think I have the power to execute this, then I have to do it. Otherwise, I will regret it all my life if it never comes to existence. If I tried and failed, I'm okay with this. Or if a better protocol wins, I'm also okay with this. I feel totally at peace. But if I've not even tried and nothing like this happens, this just doesn't feel good. So that's why what we do at Corpus, we are a venture studio, and people misunderstand us a lot. We are not, Corpus Ventures is not a VC, it's not a venture fund. We are a group of people, self-funded, building products or missing pieces in Web3. That's all we do. We just love Web3, we see what's happening there, and if we see there's a piece missing, we build it. So we built GasHawk, a tool for saving fees on non-time critical transactions. Don't need to say anything more about this because that's it. So GasHawk. We built now Tokenized because we felt the pain in those GmbH shares and we just resolved. We built DM3 because we saw this pain in messaging, and we have even more ideas coming up. So we feel the urge to build it because it's the missing piece. And maybe we are economically successful by doing so, maybe not. But in the end, having tried is the most important part.
Gotta love this. Really cool. So I want to bore with two more questions, just with regards to your time. I want to borrow this question from Tim Ferriss. Like, it's one of his famous questions, but I think it's so cool. So if you had a billboard that millions, maybe the whole world would see, you could set it up here. What would you write on that billboard? Like this short message to the world here, maybe with regards to Web3 or something like that. Anything come to mind?
So regards to Web3, the shortest one I would say is own it. So own it in the sense of, or own your digital life. This is, or get it back. So because people already gave much of it to the big tech companies. It's a good question. I have to think more about it. Maybe I come up with something more creative or something better. But in the essence, owning your life, owning your digital life, or just own it, and thinking about all the implications, not just owning guilt and owning like what you did wrong. It's what people usually think of is they just own it and something bad happened, but own it in the sense of see if the things which actually belong to you, if you actually have true ownership or if you've given it the ownership away.
I think that's a perfect answer, to be honest. Like, it's almost just do it, like Nike, own it, Christoph Jentzsch. We're getting somewhere here. So when I had the chance to talk to you, I always wonder, like, where do people like you get information about Web3? What are your sources of information? Like, as someone like me, I would think, that it's so different, and you have the secret forums and whatnot. Like, how do you get information?
So it started with just the Ethereum group was so small, actually was on Reddit. Reddit Ethereum in 2015 was a great place. So that which had all the information. Then it became too crowded and it kind of moved to Twitter. And then, of course, it depends on who you follow on Twitter. So I'm still following those people from 2015, 16, and just have added a few people since. That's at least how I feel about it. So, and those are mostly the entrepreneurs and the builders. Those who I follow. I'm not following too much people who are just speculating or promoting things, but follow those who are building products in the Web3 space and what they write, where they see the future, what kind of things they are building. Conference talks, as DevCon is super important. ECC is very important for the European space. Yes, those conferences plus follow the builders on Twitter. And I don't have any secret forum. I don't have any other source of real information. Of course, those friends, they sometimes send you an email or some blog post. I think blog posts are even better because they go more in detail. So that's usually you write a tweet if you can make it short. If you have more to say, you point to your blog. And that's where I get my information from. Yeah.
Awesome. Christoph, thank you for all the value. Where can people find you online? Maybe your company, maybe also your own profiles. Where can we get connected and find more about what you do? And where would you send
So
them?
on corpus.io, the website will be renewed in a couple of days. It's where you find our company, what we do. Myself, I'm mostly active again on Twitter. So CHR, like the first three letters of Christoph, and then Jentzsch, GENTZSTH, is my Twitter handle. I'm not as active as on LinkedIn, so you might not find me there. But if you want to send me a direct message, you can actually use DM3. So if you go on DM3 Network, open the app, my ENS handle is jentzsch.eth, so you can write me a message.
Solid ENS. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the insights, the wisdom, and the value. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Ja. Okay, alles klar. Super, Christoph. Genial.